my channel. This is Frugalissima. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to talk about an overview of the Great British Sewing Bee. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's subscribed. If you're interested in sewing, if you consider subscribing below, and if you hit the notification bell as well, that will let you know when I have any new videos. So this video is just an overview of the Great British Sewing Bee. If you missed some of my other videos, I did a review of each of the episodes and set myself a little mini challenge each week. I'll leave a link to that playlist at the end, so if you can catch up on those if you're interested. So, is anybody missing the bee? I certainly am on a Wednesday evening. I've not found anything else to watch so far. I think it's been a bit of a welcome sort of distraction, really, for most people, and especially since it was a little bit longer as well. This year's show started with 12 contestants, with the added interest for me that I knew one of them. In fact, I knew both Ali and Fiona because I met Fiona briefly just before the show started as well. She came down to visit Ali, and we all had a bit of a sewing get together just before the show. So it was really nice watching somebody that you know in it. It's a shame she didn't get back beyond the week that she did, but you know, somebody has to go, and I think that's one of the things that I wanted to chat about really is the at some point is the format of the show. Really, it's really difficult trying to judge right at the beginning who's going to win, because you'd work on the assumption that everyone's sort of there on a level playing field. You're trying to find the best sewer in Britain, which is what it's supposed to be about. You know, everybody has their weaknesses, so it just seems a bit of a shame that the first week somebody has to go. I would like to see in future perhaps people helping each other and perhaps having a bit more of a chance, so that nobody gets eliminated in the first 2 or 3 shows. Maybe that would work a little bit better, so you get a better idea of what they've got to offer. Specifically, I was thinking about Angelia. I think she was the first contestant to get to leave. You could see that she was a lady with a wealth of experience, just, you know, perhaps not fast enough. And I realise that, you know, it's a competition, you've got to keep it entertaining, but it'd be nice just to see the relationships between each other develop, and maybe helping each other out a little bit more in the first couple of shows, working together on something. Less about speed and more about sewing. I think that's my biggest criticism of the show. So I think if I hadn't have already known Ali at the beginning, I would probably have been shouting for Claire. And again, I think one of my other criticisms of the show is that how they seem to like people to stick with their types. So Claire with the vintage and Liz with the goth. It just got a bit passé, really. I like to sew vintage clothes. I quite enjoy going to vintage shows and things like that, but that's not my everyday lifestyle, and it's certainly not my everyday sewing. There are many facets to many people, and I think, you know, I think I'd like to see a less one-dimensional part of people's personalities, I think. In future series, I think I'd like to see maybe the format changing a little bit, where there's more techniques shown or discussed at least. I could do with less of, from my personal point of view, and it's not going to be a popular one because I know everybody loves him and I don't dislike the guy, but less of the tired jokes and larking about, and more techniques. I think some of it could give sewing a bad name. I mean, we've as home sewers, we've battled for years trying to convince people that we can produce something equally as wearable, and it would be nice for people to see, and I'm specifically thinking about the halter neck dresses now, that's not the best that people can produce. Onto the things that I sewed for the challenges. So each week I challenged myself to sew something that was inspired by the show, and this is the dress that I sewed for the very last one, which was the finals week. Had in the very final made to measure round was red carpet, and it was cutaway. Something had to have a cutaway in it. In the last week they had a boy's kilt, upcycled some swimwear, and the red carpet dress. Well, I didn't really need any of those really. I certainly didn't need a boy's kilt. So I decided I would use the inspired by to its extremes really, and just find something that had a bit of a cutout detail, and I decided to use this New Look pattern, which I'd had for quite a long time. This is a 64269, and I sewed this view here. I will insert some pictures because I don't think I'm going to get a great view. So the dress itself is quite a simple shift style, but it's got French darts, and then these cutaways are not really cutaways, they're just actually tabs that are fitted into the bodice, and then a separate collar. So you've got quite a cutaway arm at the back. I quite like the pattern. I had the fabric given to me by Minerva in exchange for a blog post. So it killed two birds with one stone really, because I wasn't sure what I was going to sew for the challenge, and I wasn't sure what I was going to sew with this fabric. I've had it quite some time, and I really needed to get it sewed up for the blog post, so it suited me to do that. It's a nice linen mix. I think it's got viscose in it, but this is a danger. This is the pitfalls of ordering fabric online. It's a little bit heavier weight than what I first anticipated I would make with it. It's perfect. It's perfect weight for this dress. But yeah, it's a nice linen. It'd be a nice summer dress. It might make for an interesting suntan if I sit out in the sunshine in this. But I always get an interesting suntan because I'm so fair skinned. I always forget when I'm sitting out. I always each year I get a silly suntan. So this can be this year's. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it. I'm glad that I tested it out on fabric that didn't cost me anything, because I think I would construct this neckband slightly different to how it's advised in the pattern. But overall, I'm not going to do a full review of this pattern. I'm more about reviewing the Great British Sewing Bee. But overall, yeah, it's a nice dress, and I'm glad I've got it sewn up. It's been in my pattern stash for quite a long time as this dress. My plan was to sew as many items as I could out of the new book that accompanied the series, and my very first video was wearing a dress out of there, which was the maxi dress. So I sewed that up to watch the first episode. So that wasn't featured on the show at all. But I bought the book because it accompanied the show. And I remember saying it'd be interesting to see how many patterns were featured in the show that were in the book. And the answer is actually only about 3, I think. The wrap skirt that was in the first episode was in there. The bomber jacket, which was in, I think that was in the Reduce, Recycle show, that was in, and the halter neck dress was also in the book. So that's only 3. And then there were 4 patterns from the previous episode, which I didn't know when I bought the book, but as soon as I bought the book I realised that they were from the previous series. So that was a man's jacket, a man's pair of trousers, the wiggle dress, and the pussy bow blouse. So out of 13 patterns that are in the book, there were only 4 from last series and 3 from this series. So if you are considering the book, to buy the book, because it might have patterns in from the shows, I think you might be a little bit disappointed. There is one recycle challenge in there that fits in with that was on this series, and that's a recycling or upcycling rather a tablecloth into a lady's dress, and that's all that there is in the book that accompanied the series. There's also a sleep set in there which I did make that is very, very similar to the ones that the contestants use, but because it was for the made to measure round, then it's not going to be the exact copy of what anybody used, because obviously they were free to use whatever patterns they wanted. And I still got to do the review of that one. I did have a few issues with it. What what I produced in the end turned out okay, but there were a few problems with fitting instructions in the book more than anything. So out of the 3 patterns that I've sewn from the book as part of my challenge, I did have issues really with all of them, which makes me sound like I'm a rubbish sewer, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't just me. Somebody contacted me through my blog post and said that they'd had similar issues with the summer dress, which I haven't sewn up, and a friend of mine sewed the sleep set, and she found the same issues that I did, in that the back piece is smaller than the front piece when you fit it in. It's nothing that if you've got a little bit of experience you can't sort out, but really you shouldn't have to do that. I'm not giving it 5 stars, put it this way. I'm not disappointed that I bought the book, because I think there's some nice patterns in it, and I will certainly use some of the other patterns, but I would be hard pressed to recommend it to anybody. I think I'm just going to leave it at that, really. So what I liked about the bee this year was, because I did this challenge for myself, it did push me into making a few things that I've been meaning to make. Often when you buy a sewing book, you're full of ideas of everything that you're going to make and never get round to it. So it's forced me to make 3 patterns that I wouldn't have tried quite so soon, although I would have sewn them obviously at some point. But dug out a few patterns that have been in my stash for quite a long time and got those sewn up as well. And I've done everything from patterns and fabrics that I own, so it's got a few of the fabrics out of my stash as well, which has been great. So I think my favourite thing of all that I made as my challenge is probably the tea dress, which I'll try and show you here, but if I can't show you very, very well. It looks very, very crumpled because it's been in my wardrobe, and that is the Simplicity 1777, and I've had that. I think I got that pattern, a pattern swap. I really enjoyed making the flamenco skirt, just using a pattern that I had and then calculating how to do the frills at the bottom. And I'll insert a photograph of that one because I've got a better photograph of it than just showing it up at the camera. What I've discovered about how I like to sew is I like to fathom things out. So I like to see something and be inspired by it, and then see how I can make it myself or make it my own. So I used African wax print to make that, which I already had, and yeah, I really enjoyed making that. And I think the little linen jacket that I made, which was inspired by the 80s week as well, that's another pattern that I've had a long time, and I'll get a lot of wear out of that. I've been really in need of a navy blue jacket for quite some time, so yeah, I enjoyed doing that one. My least favourite out of them all, I think, is going to have to be the bomber jacket from the book. I don't think I'm ever going to wear that, to be quite honest. Which is this. And it's just a bit too boxy on me, I think, and I think if the ribbon pulled it in a bit better at the bottom, and that's part user error, I suppose, then I might be a bit more keen to wear it. So I've got quite a few items there that I probably wouldn't have made, and what's been good for me is because I was making quite a lot of scrubs at the beginning, sort of probably March, April, I made quite a lot of scrubs, and it kind of sucked the joy out of sewing for me a little bit. It's batch sewing, which I don't particularly enjoy, and I'd lost my sojo, as I call it, a little bit for sewing garments. There was nothing to sew for quite some time, in that most events have been cancelled. I would go into some weddings. I would have enjoyed making dresses for weddings, so it's quite difficult sewing for an imaginary life, really. Really, what we would be doing was staying at home most of the time. So it did kick-started my passion for garment sewing again, which that was great. So I don't know about anybody else, but I did find the transformation round a little bit contrived towards the end, and I think again, I think we need a bit of a change of format. I think really going in to next year. I'd like to see different aspects of sewing being shown. Maybe they could include quilt making or homeware design or bag making. There are so many aspects to sewing that isn't garment sewing, and it is called the Sewing Bee. And I think a lot of people have probably started watching the Sewing Bee who might have a machine at home, might have done a bit of home decor, may have done a bit of quilting, and it kind of misses all those people out, and I think it's a bit unfair really. I am predominantly a garment sewer, but I've made all my blinds and curtains at home, I've made bags, I've done a bit of quilting. As long as I'm sewing, I'm happy. I don't think everybody is so one-dimensional again. You know, you like to dabble with a bit of embroidery or things like that. In the book that it does cover sort of embellishment and things like that, and I think that middle transformation round, whilst I'd like to see some transformations, I'd like to see more realistic transformations. So from jeans and shirts and old duvet covers and things like that, I do think that especially this year, as it was supposed to be around about sustainability, that we should have seen a lot more transformations done with consideration really. More how-tos and how to sort of look at a certain, like a shirt or something like that, and different things that you could do, rather than manically trying to produce something that, for me, many of them were completely unwearable really, realistically. But also covering other aspects of sewing, I think that's what really, for me, it would make it more interesting. And let you know, the comedy, to keep that for another show. I don't think it needs to have comedy in it. I don't think it has to be deadly serious either, but you know, it's a light entertainment show, I understand that, but I don't really see why you have to have somebody looning about in a sleeping bag, but that's just me. I wonder if anybody watching has applied for next year. You know, I'd be interested to see if anybody's been that inspired by the Sewing Bee that they've decided to apply and see how they get on. Personally, I did apply actually a couple of years ago, not last season, the season before, and got a phone call that I was going on holiday. I don't think I'd have got very far with it. I don't think I'd have worked very well under the pressure. How the contestants work with the cameras in the face and Joe Lycett messing about and what have you. I think it does take a very special sort of person to be able to work with that kind of pressure. And I really did enjoy the contestants this year. I think they had a smashing sort of sense of camaraderie, and you can see that if you ever see any of them on social media, they're generally chatting to each other and encouraging each other and what have you. In addition to all the sewing I got through, I also started this YouTube channel, which I would never have done if I hadn't had anything to talk about each week. And on top of that then, I've started with the 100 Days of Sewing, where I'm talking about sewing. It's just a little challenge for myself to talk about sewing on a daily basis. Help to build my confidence with YouTubing, I think, and help people who are either new to sewing or want to get into sewing or feel that sewing is unaffordable and therefore unattainable. I just want to make people realise that how accessible sewing is to everybody. I'm just an enthusiast that hopes to inspire people. And that's it from me. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and hit the thumbs up below, and you'll be notified of any videos that I make in the future. Coming up next week are some more videos in my 100 Days of Sewing series. They're all in one playlist, so you can catch up whenever you feel like it. So we'll be talking about fabric and patterns and some more of the essentials this week, and perhaps starting a little project. Okay, thank you. Bye.